fantasy manager. This is Devo 1099 with Fantasy Football Backers Weekly Premier League video blog. What do we call this? Podcast? I don't know. Game week 5 coming up. We've got Friday Night Football with Chelsea hosting Liverpool. We're going to focus on the Draftkings Saturday slate. I hope everybody did well in Champions League this week. I had a really good game on Tuesday with the Barcelona crew, and I had Kimmich from Germany, who obviously worked out very well. My club Arsenal managed to draw Paris Saint-Germain. I of course had the PSG keeper, and that cost me a good bit of money. But I'm very happy that Arsenal got a point. I am not happy that I lost a bunch of money because of it, but so it goes. Game week 5 is great. It's going to be split up here into almost 2 separate slates. You've got the Friday night match. I'm not going to mess with that. If you do, I don't know. I wouldn't. I wouldn't personally. I would potentially join leagues and leave that one blank and hope that the people that you're playing against play the wrong players in that game or play too many players in that game, and you have the ability to pick and choose from everything that you get to see on Saturday from the 4 games that you'll have lineups for prior to the Everton-Middlesbrough match. So that's typically how I would play that. That's how, if you do the early matches on Saturday, before the 3 p.m. matches, that's a similar way to play it as well. I don't really have any data to back that up. It's mostly logic that suggests that you want to have all the information possible if you can, and you don't want to overreact to what you see in lineups in the early match and not fully appreciate the value proposition those players are giving you. So if you can't avoid it and you really want to play the Chelsea-Liverpool match, I think I would take Chelsea players for the most part. I do like Liverpool quite a bit this year, but I think Chelsea is going to be ready for this one, and they're much more defensively organized than Liverpool is right now. So it could be a really exciting game, though. I'm glad that we'll have that Friday afternoon in the East Coast here in the U.S. and Friday Night Football. If you're sitting here watching this, there's a good chance you're watching Friday Night Football as well. So let's get right to the Saturday slate. I really like the way this sets up. There's a lot of different ways to go making your cash team, and understanding the difference between a cash team and a GPP team becomes especially important this week because there's a lot of goals to be had here in the Premier League, which is similar to Champions League. We want the security of those crosses and fouls drawn and shots. You don't want to avoid players that can score goals, but you don't want to load up on them and then have to punt your defenders and a midfielder and a keeper. I've seen a lot of trends in recommendations of keepers. The way that the Draftkings pricing has gone, it's hard to really afford. It's hard to afford an expensive keeper. I'm seeing a lot of advice to go as cheap as possible, to take whoever fits. It's not the worst advice. I think that we're lacking data to a degree here. But we do know that if a keeper is 5,800 and you don't really think he's going to get much in terms of traffic, and he might get a win and a clean sheet and get you 10 points, well, that's not even 2x. And if you're not scoring 100 points pretty regularly, even in cash games, I think you're probably struggling to win. But I would love to see a little bit more data on this. I think part of it is that you can't always guarantee those 10 points, even from teams that are heavily favored. So why bother? it is a bit of a lottery. But I guess that, DraftKings has also closed the gap in terms of what sort of discount you're going to get if you do go with a cheaper keeper that is very likely to lose, but might get a few saves. So I'd like to look more into that, into goalkeeper strategy. I think there's something there still, at least in cash games, but I've been kind of toying with it myself and taking some terrible keepers on terrible teams and surviving. So, maybe that's just how we need to approach it from here on. So, Hull hosting Arsenal. So Hull, by anything I've looked at outside of their record, they have not been a very good team. They managed to hold United scoreless for 90 minutes at home. United got an extra time goal, but they were under siege the entire time. They've given up the most crosses in the league. They've given up the most shots in the league. They've given up the most. I think they've given up the most chances in the league. They have not given up the most big chances in the league. So they're doing something where they're limiting the quality of the chance. So that's something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. When you start seeing performances where they just don't add up, there might be something going on that we're not measuring properly with the statistics we're using. That said, I think Jakupovic has played extremely well. You can't play this well that long. And I think that they are eventually going to start conceding a lot more goals. Starting with maybe Arsenal. So Arsenal's lineup is going to be interesting. We'll have it before the matches start, but we've seen Alexis play up top. We've seen him out on the wing. We've seen Giroud up top. We've seen Lucas up top. We've seen Iwobi. We've seen Oxlade-Chamberlain. We've seen Ozil, Cazorla. All of these guys could be in play. I'd like to know what Walcott is going to do. He didn't make the trip to Paris. I don't think he's going to play on Saturday. I think that helps, not only opening up a spot, but also preventing him from coming on for somebody a little bit earlier than anticipated. So I think that you're going to want to take whomever is on the wings. You're going to probably make a decision between Cazorla and Ozil if you're looking at those two. I do like Cazorla right now. He's taking more corner kicks. He's taking a lot of the indirect kicks. He is on penalties. So when you take a lot of that away from Ozil, would he still be 8,900? Probably not. And I think that difference in price is enough for me to potentially take Cazorla. He's kind of got a solid floor, and then he does have that upside if there's a penalty. Alexis out on the left is very interesting if he plays on the left wing, because Hull happen to be extremely weak there. They have given up the most crosses and I believe the most chances on their defensive right, which is where Alexis would be. So Alexis should be tired. He seems like he's okay. He scored a nice goal in Paris. So at 9,200, I like Alexis. I think we start to run into problems primarily because on this slate there's so many other options. So Alexis is 9,200 in cash with the new multi-position eligibility. He's not, somebody that we just plug him in at forward and we have to play him because the opportunity cost of going down to, a Giroud or another goal, focused forward would be too big a drop. That's not really present this week, and I'll get to why that's the case. But I'm probably not going to play Alexis in my cash teams. I'll definitely want to have him in some upside teams. And then, it's a matter of do you stack a team when you think that there's several teams that are going to score and try to get the team that scores 5, or do you kind of mix and match top players from each team and try to get some that are less popular? So I don't know. I don't like the Arsenal fullbacks here. I do think that they're going to be in the whole side of the field a lot, but they just haven't really done a whole lot yet. So it's hard to pay that price when you're trying to get, as good of attackers as we're going to want. The flip side to that, however, is there just aren't really many defenders that I like on this slate at all. So you can't pay for Fuchs from Leicester. Kolarov is not worth it these days. So, if it comes down to it and you have to play a Monreal, he's got a nice defensive floor because he gets tackles. He's got 9 tackles on the year. I do like Monreal, and he's on that left side where I mentioned is giving up a lot of crosses. So kind of see how our team structure shakes out as we're creating our lineups, but he could be in play. I don't think Czech is, but potentially. On the whole side, I think in GPPs I would probably take Jakubovic. Arsenal have those matches where they take a lot of shots and can't score. They also have those matches where they just don't even get shots off because they're trying to get better chances. If Hull are actually doing something that is preventing really good chances from happening, then there's a chance that we're going to see Arsenal taking shots from outside the box, which Hull has allowed the most shots from outside the box. They've allowed the 5th or 6th most shots from inside the box. So they're doing something to funnel teams out to the the flanks a little bit. So I think Arsenal could be susceptible to that because Wenger is not a very good tactical manager these days. Arsenal certainly have superior talent to Hull, so they should score, which is why I would be a GPP play. But Jakubovic at 4,300 or David Marshall, if he plays 4,200, could pile up some saves if Arsenal has one of those matches. Moving along to Leicester, the champions looked good in Champions League. They went to Bruges and won convincingly, won 3-0. Bruges is buried in the Jupiler League right now. I think they are 10th. So this wasn't altogether surprising. If they were winning the Belgian league, Leicester's still talented enough to go in and win a match like that, and they did it. Mahrez looked very good. Whether he can maintain that level of intensity for another match a few days later is up for debate. But at 9,500, I think he's in play. Albrighton at 7,500, I think it's tough because he's very unlikely to score goals despite his goal in Champions League. He's splitting corners at best with Mahrez. So you're kind of depending on an assist and maybe 10 crosses, and that could happen. But that's only getting you to 2x, which is about 15 points anyhow. I don't think you're going to get the shot volume, and like I said, I don't really think you're going to get a goal. So 7,500 is tough. I wouldn't mind pairing him with Vardy in a GPP, but I'm probably not even really looking at him very hard in cash because I'd rather just take Cazorla at 7,700. Vardy's 9,400, so we're not getting a discount for his struggles yet, which relegates him to GPP only. But they could put it on Burnley. Burnley has not been very good. They've been about as bad as Hull in terms of what they're conceding. So I am not going to hesitate to use some Leicester players. And I think they might be a little bit less popular just because City and Arsenal have a little bit more cachet than Leicester. And people may even reach for Everton. They've got players that tend to make their way into fantasy lineups pretty consistently. One player I will mention from Burnley is Jeff Hendrick. The Irishman came from Championship, and he played a few minutes last match. He probably will not be playing on the wing. He'll probably play more of a central midfield role, not necessarily a defensive midfield role, but a central midfield role. He's only 3,300. So I you probably want 8 to 10 points out of him, which I think is a tall order. But it does, and this is what I kind of was getting back to with cash versus GPP. I think it does unlock enough money for you in, for GPP teams to maybe get some of the more high-end players. So keep Hendrick in mind if you get in a bind where you've got room for a 3,300 player and you're not sure what to do. I think in that case, Hendrick will work. Moving along to Manchester City, Bournemouth have been really, really terrible. They've been one of the worst teams in the league. They've been giving up a multitude of big chances, and now they got to run into a City team that just handled Gladbach extremely easily, and Gladbach is far better than Bournemouth. Bournemouth is lost. They don't create chances. They don't prevent them. They have no identity right now. I never thought that Matt Ritchie could have that much of an impact on a team, but apparently he did, or at least had enough that something's going on there. Jordan Ibe is not a good player. He could be a good fantasy player, not in this match, but at 4,700, he's cheap. He's cheap, and there's a chance that City are up so much that they get a little bit lackadaisical and fail to get back, and maybe Ibe can score some points that way. Not really a great way to make a team, but from the City standpoint, KDB is just has started to really pick it up. He has the joint most chances created in the league. He has the third most crosses. He has the second most touches in the final third. So he's getting forward and he's getting into dangerous positions, and he's playing really well. He's 9,700. He's now eligible at forward, which I think is probably a good thing. So you have that kind of flexibility. You can avoid the goal scoring only forwards. Sterling at 7,400, I like. Nolito at 7,500, I like. Iheanacho might start. He'd be 7,200. I think that's a GPP only play. But he could definitely score. He scored in Champions League at the end of that match to get their fourth after Aguero had a hat trick. Aguero is going to be missing out, suspended again. Gundogan played and started for the first time. I think he had something like 8 fantasy points. He took 2 shots on goal. Didn't do much defensively. Took 1 corner, which I don't think will be a trend, but something to keep an eye on. And then we've got Bravo at 5,800, which is fine. I like City to win this match fairly easily. Maybe Bournemouth will manage some inefficient shots and give him a few saves along the way. West Brom and West Ham is certainly the least interesting match of the 5 on Saturday. There's a couple players that do stand out, though. Matt Phillips has been taking corners and has been getting a substantial amount of crosses for West Brom. He's only 4,700 at midfield. I think there's a good chance that he is going to be a candidate for my cash team. Rondon at 6,500 in a GPP. Sure, maybe. Chadley is now at West Brom, and we know he can score goals, or he could for the Spurs. I don't know that he will continue to do so full toolless. So the West Ham side, they collapsed last match. They haven't looked good at home. Payet did play and played well. He had a couple assists. He's 9,600, and I think that the way that West Brom tend to play, he's probably going to get a good number of crosses, get some shots in. Does he have the upside of an Alexis, of a Mahrez, of a KDB? This week, probably not. But I think that his floor might be higher than Alexis, in particular, than Mahrez probably as well, maybe a little closer to Mahrez. But, we don't see Payet, score less than 10 or so points a match unless, unless that there's somebody that, there's a team that's doing enough defensively to just keep him out of dangerous positions. I don't think West Brom will have that ability. So I'm going to be looking very hard at Payet for my cash team. I think I will probably ultimately play him unless it seems like the best way to structure it is only take one player over 9,000 and then kind of fill it in with other players that you think can score but won't break your budget quite as much. So it'll be interesting how that shakes out, whether you can find defenders that you're comfortable with that are still inexpensive enough that you can pay up, and that's where like a guy like Phillips could come in and help your team out. I don't think you'll have to go all the way down to Hendrick for cash. I would recommend not. So Michael Antonio scored 2 goals last time out. We talked about him. Nick and I agreed he was well overpriced. It seemed like most of the market agreed he was overpriced. I did recommend, in a GPP that you could play him because he would be under-owned, because he was overpriced. It turned out, scoring 2 goals works out quite well. I, of course, did not take him anywhere because I thought he was overpriced. But, things work out. I don't think the analysis is wrong there. He scored on that Rabona assist from Payet and just, had a tap in. But he gets himself in dangerous positions, so he's a good player. I don't think I'll be paying for him anytime soon as long as he is north of 7,000. I'd like him more in like the 5,500 to 6,000 range. So I'll wait. The fullbacks for West Ham, assuming that they are going to have the ball, which, this might be closer to a 50-50 split, just because West Ham's not really good at possessing the ball either. Byram's at 4,300. I like him. Masaaku is 5,000. 5,000 gets a little bit expensive, but he's probably good for 8 points. I just don't know if that's interesting enough for me to bother. But that is probably it for West Ham. Adrian is potentially a decent spot where he should get some saves, and maybe if he's lucky, he can get a win and a clean sheet, or at least a win as well. But you're not getting much of a discount for him. Lastly, the late match on Saturday is Everton hosting Middlesbrough. Everton have looked good. They haven't had a very difficult schedule, but Koeman is starting to get a lot out of Morales. He got a hat trick out of Lukaku. He's got Bolasie playing. Bolasie had, I think, 11 crosses and an assist. So I think that there's going to be some fantasy points scored here. I don't think Middlesbrough is bad. I definitely think they will stay up, but I don't necessarily think they're impressive either. So I think it could be one of those matches where Everton's going to have the ball, and Morales and Bolasie are going to be firing in crosses, and Lukaku's going to hopefully get on the end of one of them. So Lukaku becomes a GPP only play. I don't know when he's really not a GPP only play. Bolasie and Morales, especially if Morales continues to take, I think he's taking most corners, if not all of them. And I will have to issue a mea culpa on him. I used to like Morales. He burned me a couple times. I think I held that against him. The injuries, the red cards. I still think he's injury prone. I still think that He's a relatively inefficient player, but I can't avoid him much longer. So I'm not committing to playing him on my cash team, but I will promise you, if I do, he will play less than 45 minutes because after all of what I've done here, he will definitely punish me for not believing him, and then do exactly what I expected him to do several weeks ago. So I don't really believe that. I'll play him if he makes sense. I'll play him, but that's going to do it for this week's video blog or podcast or whatever we're calling this. Fantasy football backers, game week 5 in the Premier League. Thanks for watching. Best of luck to you, and we'll see you again soon.